Discover the incredible journey of an Irish bride, 3 hidden truths that changed everything forever. Maeve stepped off the boat and onto the docks of Philadelphia, her heart racing with hope and trepidation. The vast landscape of Pennsylvania stretched out before her, rolling hills kissed by the sun, homes nestled close, and the promise of a new life bound in her small suitcase. She clutched a worn photo of her family, their smiles vivid reminders of what drove her. "I'll build a better life for us," she whispered, her resolve unwavering. A gust of wind swept past, carrying whispers of possibilities and fears that in a quaint rural town, Maeve opened a small bakery, pouring her heart into every loaf of bread and pastry. The scent of freshly baked goods mixed with the crisp morning air. She imagined the faces of her loved ones, smiling as they shared her treats. But the warmth of the community soon turned cold. Local families shared suspicious glances and whispered words. Her Irish roots seemed to sow seeds of doubt in their hearts, causing cracks in the cozy facade of this American tableau. The town buzzed with life, children played in the streets, families gathered for fairs filled with laughter, and Sundays echoed hymns of unity. Maeve worked tirelessly, embodying the very spirit of America: hard work and perseverance. Yet, as the bakery garnered a following, the weight of prejudice pressed heavier as economic struggles gripped the town. Families, frightened and desperate, began to point fingers, and Maeve became a target. Just when her bakery began to thrive, misfortune struck. Storms ravaged crops, leaving countless families in despair. With rumors swirling, Maeve became the face of outsiders, blamed for the town's downfall. She felt her world shatter as she learned her bakery was at risk of closure. Fear and anger flared within her heart. Should she fight for her dreams, or would that risk tearing her community apart further? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Driven to take action, Maeve stumbled upon a hidden web of corruption. A local leader preyed on the townsfolk's fears, manipulating them for his gain. With her bakery and future on the line, Maeve summoned her courage. She sought the former adversaries and rallied them to her cause, advocating for truth at a town meeting. As she stood at the front of the gathering, the tension in the room hung like a thick fog. Many looked on with doubt, but Maeve's heart beat loudly with determination, a relentless hope stirring in her chest. Suddenly, her eyes locked with an unexpected ally, an old rival, equally burdened with a secret. Would they rise together to face the very townsfolk who once turned their backs on her? The air crackled with tension and unspoken possibilities. The time for change was now, but could Maeve weave a tapestry of unity in a town divided by fear? As murmurs filled the room, silence fell, and Maeve took a deep breath, ready to forge her path, her heart racing with the urgency of the moment. What would happen next in this battle for acceptance, truth, and dreams? Maeve's heart pounded as she stood there, an unwavering flame against the chill of division. The hall was filled with familiar faces, but they felt like strangers now. With hope flickering inside her, she stepped forward, the worn photo of her family gripped tightly in her hand, silently urging her to push through. "Listen!" she called out, her voice rich with passion. The murmurs slowly quieted. "I came here to share my dreams and feed this community with love and warmth. Yes, I am Irish. But what does it matter? We all want the same things: a home, a family, and a place where we belong." A ripple of surprise swept across the crowd. Some gazes softened, while others remained hardened. Maeve sensed the weight of their fears pressing down. She wouldn't back down now. "I know things are tough. Crops are failing, families are struggling. But we can't turn on each other. We deserve better." The room held its breath. Maeve glanced at her old rival, Patrick, whose presence had been both a bane and a comfort. He shifted uncomfortably, and for a moment, her courage wavered. But then she saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He had faced his own battles and was just as weary of the blame. "You think it's easy for me?" He suddenly spoke, his voice cutting through the tension. "I've lost customers, too. But it's not Maeve's fault, it's circumstances beyond our control." A murmur of agreement followed, cautiously at first, then gathering strength. Maeve felt the first winds of change stirring. "Together, we can prevail," Patrick went on, his tone growing stronger, backing Maeve's plea. "If we put aside our differences, we can find solutions. Let us support each other instead of pointing fingers." Several townsfolk shifted in their seats, their hearts beginning to thaw. Maeve's gaze swept the crowd, catching hints of empathy blurring the lines of fear. This was the moment she'd been fighting for. She took a step closer, her voice softening. "We are all in this together. We deserve a home where we can share our joys and struggles. Let us build that community now." Just then, an elder member of the town, Mrs. O'Malley, rose shakily to her feet. "I'll admit, I had my doubts," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "But I've tasted Maeve's bread, and it brings joy to my heart. I want that joy for everyone." The crowd began to nod, and a few voices chimed in, offering their support. Maeve's spirit soared, but she reminded herself this was just the beginning. With warmth spreading in her chest, Maeve felt the audience leaning towards her, supporting her. Their unspoken bond fought against the isolation that had plagued her for so long. There was a flicker of unity in the air, something she hadn't dared to dream of just moments before. As the meeting continued, Maeve suddenly felt a hand on her shoulder. Turning, she saw Patrick smiling at her, his eyes brimming with newfound determination. "Let us make this work," he whispered. "Together." Hope swirled around them like a gust of fresh air. But beneath it all, there was still a storm brewing. The community might have begun to unite, but the leader who had turned them against her was watching from the shadows, plotting his next move. Would they be able to stand united against a darkness that threatened to tear them apart once again? Maeve's heart pounded heavily as she faced the unknown, knowing the battle for her bakery and for acceptance was only just beginning. Maeve felt a swell of hope as she looked out over the audience, their faces beginning to light with understanding. The collective tension that had gripped the hall slowly began to dissolve. She exchanged a glance with Patrick, and they both knew that something significant had shifted. But just as quickly, a sharp chill punctured the warmth that had settled in her heart. Through the window, the late afternoon sun attempted to break through the gathering clouds. Outside, Maeve could see townsfolk huddled together, whispering urgently. Anxiety crackled in the air, reminding her how fragile this moment of unity was. She returned her focus to the crowd before her, fighting to hold on to the optimism that now flickered nearby. As Mrs. O'Malley spoke again, a strength emerged from the elder woman's presence, stirring more hearts. "If Maeve is showing us the way to a better community, then I say we follow." The crowd erupted into a mix of applause and murmured agreement. The sounds washed over Maeve like a soft wave, but lingering in the background was a quiet dissonance. A heavy door creaked open, and the atmosphere shifted again. All heads turned toward the sound. In the doorway stood Frank, the town's self-appointed leader, his gaze cold and calculating. Maeve's heartbeat quickened. Just the sight of him made insecurity snap back into her mind. The unity they had almost formed felt shaky now. "You fooled them well, Maeve," he declared, stepping into the light. His voice rang out, low but firm. "You play the victim like a pro. But don't think they'll forget your roots. Never forget, this is our town, our livelihood at stake." Maeve clutched the photo of her family tighter, willing the warmth from it to cover her apprehension. The crowd was torn. Whispers erupted, mixing hope with doubt as tension rippled through the hall. "Frank, stop. This isn't the time for your lies," Patrick interjected, stepping forward with raw conviction. "People are suffering, and we can only overcome if we work together." "Together?" Frank shot back, scoffing. "You think this will fix anything? You've misled them long enough. His words sliced through the hopeful atmosphere, and Maeve felt the wind of uncertainty whip around her once more, yet, instead of faltering, she sensed a wave of resilience growing within herself. No, I've made no promises. I've only shared my heart. She replied, her voice trembling but steady. Everyone deserves a second chance. Just like I did. The mixed crowd fell silent for a moment, absorbing the truth in her statement. Some shared looks of contemplation, weighing their feelings about unity versus loyalty to those like Frank, who draped their motivations in supposed protection. Let me show you, Maeve continued, earning a few nods. Join me, and together we can find abundance. The mention of abundance became like a spell thrust into the air, reminding everyone of what was possible. Is that what you're after? Frank said, his sneer barely masking the anger beneath. Deceptions and dreams can't feed your bellies, Maeve. Her gut twisted at his words, and she steeled herself for the fight ahead. They were at a crossroads, and this moment could crumble their fragile bond or push it towards something beautiful if they could all hold on to the hope she had ignited. She wanted nothing more than to forge ahead, but uncertainty clawed at her. If they were to stand united against Frank, they would need to rally not just for her bakery, but for each other. The stakes had risen. I don't know what will happen next, she confessed, allowing vulnerability to seep through. But I believe in us. I believe we can rise above this. With those words echoing in the hall, Maeve sensed the atmosphere shift again. The audience leaned toward her once more, sparking a new conversation among themselves, but Frank wasn't finished yet. He leaned in, causing a shiver to run down her spine. You think you can turn them against me? You'll regret this, Maeve. The sun isn't the only thing that hides behind clouds. As he stepped back, Maeve realized the battle was far from over. The question now lingered in her mind: how long could this light remain in the face of growing shadows? Would she and Patrick have the strength to transform hope into a battle cry? The moment felt massive, yet fragile. Maeve's heart raced, knowing the fight had truly just begun. The tension in the room thickened, pressing against Maeve like a heavy fog. Patrick stepped closer to her, grounding Maeve as Frank's ominous words hung over them all. The murmurs among the crowd began to swell, a mixture of support and uncertainty, the very fabric of their community wavering in that charged moment. Listen to her. A voice rose from the back. It was Charlie, a farmer who had always been skeptical of change. His voice had a warmth that cut through the chill. We've all struggled, but letting fear rule us will only drag us deeper. Charlie's right. Echoed a woman with tears in her eyes. We have to believe in something more. The crowd started to rally, a flicker of hope being fanned back into life. Maeve felt the thudding of her heart match the rhythm of their rising determination, but Frank wasn't going to back down easily. You trust a baker over the man who has fought for this town. She's here to spin dreams, not truth. His words fell like stones, but Maeve stood firm. Frank, I'm not asking for blind trust, she called out, her voice ringing with conviction. I'm asking for us to look at what we can build together. A bakery isn't just about bread, it's about coming together. It's about finding our potential in each other, not tearing each other apart. The crowd's resolve felt electric. People reached out to one another, exchanging looks that spoke volumes. Maeve saw the flickers of hope ignite in hearts as they began to connect those dots. She stepped forward, fueled by the courage radiating from Patrick and the townsfolk gathered behind her. What if we take a step back, just for a moment? Maeve suggested, her voice calm yet compelling. What if we share our stories? The struggles, the losses, the hopes. Each and every one of us has felt the weight of this town on our shoulders. Together, we can lift it. A ripple of agreement surged through the audience. One by one, people began to raise their voices, some sharing small tales of hardship, others recounting moments of joy amid their struggles. The atmosphere shifted, filling with vulnerability and strength. Maeve smiled as more and more faces animated with connection. She couldn't predict where this was headed, but the warmth of community was stirring, melting the resistances Frank had instilled. But then, Frank stepped closer again, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can weave a fairy tale with mere stories?" he sneered. "This isn't a game, Maeve. We're talking survival." Before she could respond, a determined spirit from the audience chimed in. "And isn't survival more than just dragging ourselves through life? It's about living with purpose." Maeve turned towards the voice, feeling a rush of affirmation. "Exactly. We're all part of this community, we have the right to thrive. But we have to trust and support each other. Only then can we find real solutions." Each word soared, striking at old fears and sowing new seeds of hope. Frank's contempt faded into something more tremulous, and for the first time, cracks appeared in his facade. The crowd's energy surged like a tide, and Maeve felt a new wave of hope wash over her, but just as victory seemed tantalizingly close, light flickering around them, a loud crash burst through the hall, silencing everyone in an instant. The heavy doors flew open, and a group of unfamiliar figures flooded in, their faces obscured by shadows. Frank's expression darkened. "What now?" Maeve's mouth went dry. The unsettling energy shifted back into the room, morphing their shared hope into a new form of fear. All eyes turned to the unexpected visitors. As Maeve's heart raced, she wondered what this new intrusion might mean for the fragile unity they had just started to forge. Would they be there to help? Or throw them further into chaos? Only time would tell, and Maeve couldn't shake the feeling that the challenges ahead would test their resolve like never before. Could they hold on to their newfound light? And what would it take to amplify their fight against the gathering darkness? The newcomers swept into the room with an unsettling authority. Maeve squinted, trying to catch a glimpse of their faces as frightened whispers scattered through the crowd like leaves in a gust of wind. The atmosphere crackled, a current of anxiety threading through the air. "Who are you?" Frank demanded, stepping forward, his voice shaky but assertive. The crowd instinctively leaned back, as if drawing strength in numbers. He looked more vulnerable than Maeve had ever seen him. One of the strangers, a tall figure clad in dark clothing, stepped into the flickering light. "We're here to discuss the future of this town," the figure announced, the voice firm but not unkind. "You may want to hear us out before casting judgment." Maeve's heart raced. There was something compelling about the stranger, a glimmer of hope wrapped in their words, but fear kept creeping back as more figures filtered through the doorway. Each pair of eyes told a story of their own, an untold history steeped in the weight of their shared burdens. "Future?" Frank scoffed, crossing his arms defiantly. "You think you can just barge in here and dictate our future? This town has fought too hard to be steered by outsiders." "Is that so?" the lead figure replied, raising an eyebrow. "And what have you built here? Fear? Division?" A ripple of gasps coursed through the crowd. Maeve felt the collective tension rise. Frank's bravado was crumbling. Behind her, she could sense Patrick moving closer, his presence silently urging her to stay strong. "Maybe we should listen," she whispered, taking a step toward the newcomers. The eyes of the crowd turned toward her, searching for guidance. "If they're here to help, they want something, Maeve," a voice cut through, sharp and filled with suspicion. It was Clara, a woman known for her fierce loyalty to Frank. "Why should we trust them?" "Because," Maeve replied, searching for the right words that could bridge the gap between fear and hope, "we need to be open to new possibilities. We've tried isolation, and it hasn't worked. Just give them a moment." The crowd murmured, uncertainty dancing between them. The tension refracted through the room, and for every person who found courage to whisper support for Maeve, someone else grimaced, caught in the web of doubt. "Listen," the tall stranger spoke again, softer this time, as if sensing their hesitation. "We have knowledge and resources that could aid you. We're aware of your struggles. The lands don't just belong to you, they belong to the people who live on them." For a moment, it all seemed to hang in the balance. Maeve could see the flickering shadows in the crowd's eyes, battling the remnants of Frank's harsh rhetoric with the possibility of something greater. "What do you want?" Frank finally asked, his tone more cautious, revealing a crack in his armor. "We want to work together," the leader replied, a hint of warmth breaking through the edge of their voice. "There is a storm coming, one that will shake the very foundations of this town." With that, silence fell over the room, a collective intake of breath. Maeve felt it like a wave, crashing against her resolve. "What do you mean by a storm?" she finally asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "If you don't prepare, you may lose more than you ever thought possible, your home, your future," the stranger conveyed ominously. As the truth of their words sank in, the sense of unity they had begun to forge felt perilously fragile. Maeve wondered if this was the moment that could either shatter them or lead to a stronger bond. But doubt crept in. Could these strangers truly offer the help they so desperately needed? The shadows shifted again, and Maeve sensed a pivotal decision loomed. Would they embrace the unknown or retreat into the familiar darkness? They had fought so hard for their light, would they risk it for a chance at something better? As the crowd's gaze locked onto her, Maeve knew she had a choice to make. And she could feel the weight of that choice bearing down on her like never before. Would she dare to step into the storm? The tension was palpable, and she took a deep breath, ready to forge ahead or retreat. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. What they faced next would shape everything. Maeve's mind raced as she stared into the eyes of the stranger, seeking anything that resembled trust or authenticity. The room around her felt heavy, a mounting pressure that pressed against her chest. She could sense the fear in the others, suspicion lying in wait like a coiled snake, ready to strike at the first sign of vulnerability. "Look," she started, her voice tentative but growing stronger. "If there is a storm coming, shouldn't we at least understand what we're up against? Maybe these people know something we don't." Uncertainty rippled through the crowd as murmurs of agreement began to mix with those of dissent. Frank's face twisted, his eyes narrowing at Maeve. "You're siding with them?" "You don't know what they could." "Or maybe I do," Maeve interrupted, her heart pounding with defiance. "You think holding on to what we've always done will save us? We've been sinking for a while now. It's time to confront what's ahead, together." Gasps from the crowd confirmed that her words had struck a nerve. The tension shifted slightly, like a breeze whispering through a tight-knit group. The stranger took a step closer, eyes locking onto Maeve with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "We come with the intention of helping you weather that storm. We have supplies, knowledge, a plan, but it requires trust." Frank's shoulders tensed, and he swallowed hard, visibly unsure. Maeve could feel Patrick's presence beside her, grounding her, encouraging her with a silent faith. "Let us hear them out," he said quietly, breaking the spell of silence that had fallen. Clara, too, looked conflicted, her loyalty to Frank battling with curiosity about the newcomers. "What kind of knowledge?" she challenged, voice still laced with suspicion. "Knowledge of the land, weather patterns, and even allies," the stranger responded, glancing at the faces surrounding them. "We know what your community has endured, the droughts, the struggles. But we also know what resources are available and what other communities have done to survive and thrive." Maeve could see the glimmers of hope flickering in the eyes of some. Maybe they were hungry for change, maybe Frank's tight grip on the past was loosening ever so slightly. The crowd was shifting, leaning toward embracing the unknown. "What allies?" Frank pressed, still wary. "We've connected with groups who want to see this town prosper. Allies that are united, waiting for your signal to help," the dark-clad figure replied, aligning their tone with a genuine warmth that dispelled a fraction of the crowd's fears. They continued laying out their plan, speaking of cooperation and the potential for growth. Maeve watched the emotions play on her neighbors' faces: fear, curiosity, skepticism, and, finally, a flicker of hope. It was intoxicating. Could it be that simple? But just as it felt like a breakthrough, the sound of a faint rumble echoed outside. The collective hush fell on the room again, this time underscored by a sense of urgency. Frank turned, his gaze shifting toward the door. "What was that?" There's a storm brewing indeed, the tall figure said, glancing knowingly toward the darkened windows. And it's not just the storm you fear. It's everything that follows it. A chill skittered across Maeve's skin. She looked to the stranger, her voice barely a whisper. What happens if we don't act? What are we really facing? There are dangers that exist beyond nature, came the reply, grim and loaded with meaning. If you turn your back on this opportunity, the storm will come, and it will be unlike anything you've ever witnessed. The weight of their words hung like a thick fog in the air. The crowd held their breath, waiting, watching as Maeve confronted the uncertainty head-on. She could feel it building, this pivotal moment, and deep down she knew she had to make a choice before it was too late. Let us not just follow the old ways, she urged, heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. Let us choose to adapt. If not for ourselves, then for everyone who depends on this town. As she finished speaking, a murmur of agreement fluttered through the gathering. There, in those fragile seconds, Maeve felt a flicker of strength swell within her. She was ready to step into the storm, but would the others follow? Before the crowd could respond, a deafening crack of thunder echoed through the town, shaking the very ground beneath them. Everyone froze, fear etched across their faces. Time is running out, Maeve, the stranger urged. You must decide before the next wave hits. Will you be ready? The tension roared back to life, mingling with the fear of an uncertain future. Maeve knew the next words she would speak could change everything. Would she dare to lead them into the unknown? And as the first raindrops began to patter against the roof, she took a deep breath, standing at a crossroads, determined to transform fear into resolve. What choice would she make now, in the eye of the storm? The thunder roared again, fierce and unrelenting, drowning out the murmurs whirling in the room. Maeve glanced at the faces around her, each one reflecting the turmoil of the moment. Clara stood with her arms crossed, brows furrowed in contemplation, while Frank's jaw clenched hard enough to turn the knuckles on his hands white. Maeve, he finally spoke, his voice low but charged. You really think they can help us? This feels reckless. But what if it isn't? She countered, desperation slipping into her words as she searched for reassurance in Patrick's eyes. Tell me, Frank, has holding on to the past saved us? We've lost so much already. The stranger stepped forward, drawing the attention of the crowd. You're right, Maeve. The past has not protected you, and the winds are changing. You need to take a risk to secure your future. The room filled with tension as Maeve saw the glimmer of hope in some faces mixed with the anxiety still gripping others. Her heart raced. What do we have to lose? She urged, trying to pierce through the fear clouding their minds. I say we trust them. We need to be bold or face the real storm ahead. Clara finally spoke, her tone softer but firm. If we follow you, Maeve, and this fails. We'll never know unless we try, she interrupted, certainty rising in her voice. Together, we stand a chance. Now or never, Patrick chimed in, his simple resolve igniting a spark within the room. Maeve turned, optimistic glances exchanging among familiar neighbors as trust began to trickle in. It was fragile but real, the stranger smiled knowingly, and Maeve felt a strange thrill. If you choose to embrace the storm with us, we'll prepare. But make no mistake, this requires your full commitment. Frank hesitated one last time, then sighed heavily. What's the plan? Gather your community, the stranger replied, emanating a calm depth that quelled some of the apprehension. We'll need everyone's skills, their strengths. The storm we face isn't just nature, it's within us. Fear, doubt, mistrust. If you're willing to confront those, you'll find resources beyond what you can imagine. Maeve could feel each heartbeat echoing like a drum, building momentum through the crowd. Slowly, she could sense them rallying together, motivated by something that felt new and exhilarating. Fragments of conversation sparked, fostering unity. I'll help organize, Clara said, her voice steely. I'm in, Frank finally declared, his resolve sharpening. But I'll be keeping an eye on things. The energy in the room shifted, as if a weight had finally lifted, replaced by something lighter. Excitement churned with apprehension as they began talking about logistics and collaboration, their initial fears morphing into questions of how they could forge a new path. As they worked through their plans, Maeve felt a warmth blossoming in her chest, a sense of leadership awakening inside her. It felt right, almost like she was tuning into a long-forgotten strength, but then, looking outside, she caught a glimpse of dark clouds rolling in, looming threats cloaked within a familiar intensity. The air thickened, and with it, a chill pierced through her newfound hope. Stay vigilant. The stranger warned, sensing the shift in atmosphere. We can't afford distractions. The crowd erupted in scrambling as gusts of wind rattled against the walls. Maeve's heart sank. They were ready for a fight, but this storm, this chaos would push them to limits they hadn't yet imagined. Absolutely ready, she whispered to herself, steeling her resolve. As they prepared for whatever would breach their community soon, she felt an undercurrent of determination flow among them. Was this the moment they had been waiting for, or was it just the beginning of something far worse? And as the first heavy drops of rain pelted the windows, Maeve understood that this storm was not just an outward force. It was a challenge that would decide who they would become. Would they emerge unified, or would they scatter like leaves in a tempest? She had to know. The room felt electric with energy, but outside, the storm finally unleashed its fury. Thunder cracked overhead, more intense now as torrents of rain lashed against the windows. Maeve's eyes darted around the room, searching for something, anything to ground her. There was no going back now, they had made the decision. Yet the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily. The stranger moved effortlessly through the gathered crowd, a calming presence amid the chaos. Focus. He called out, his voice rising over the tumult. Let us harness this energy. We need to split into teams and assess our resources. We can't let the storm derail us. Maeve watched as Clara, with her determined gaze, started directing pairs to gather supplies. It was like seeing a dam burst. The stream of fear began to flow forwards, transforming into resolve. Frank was busy, gathering tools and creating a map on a large piece of scrap wood. His tense demeanor shifted as he found purpose, heart hammering. Maeve felt the shift within herself too. She stepped forward, raising her hands to get the group's attention. Everyone, let us form a circle. We need to share our strengths. We can do this together. Her voice swelled with confidence she scarcely felt, but their eyes met hers, a flicker of hope sparking between them. One by one, they shared what they could offer, skills ranging from carpentry to cooking to first aid, all valuable in the face of a brewing tempest. It was incredible how a single storm had woven their lives into one strand. Maeve felt her heart swell as laughter broke through the conversations, warmth contrasting against the cold dread that lurked outside. We may be scared, but fear can light a fire of strength, Patrick urged, his own fear evident yet somehow invigorating everyone else. Let us fight against the storm, for each other. The loud cracks of thunder echoed, but now it felt symbolic rather than ominous. Every strike felt like a battle cry. Maeve's spirit soared as she listened, fueled by a newfound kinship and collective strength. Perhaps they were not just facing environmental chaos, they were wrestling with the idea of turning fear into action. As they formed working groups, Maeve caught sight of the stranger standing quietly, observing. What is your name? She asked, stepping close to him amid the rapid-fire energy of coordinated efforts. Call me Elias, he responded, his voice gentle. I am but a whisper of change. What is your plan? She pressed, a mix of curiosity and gratitude fueling her words. The storm will force you to confront your greatest challenges, both within and without, he said, meeting her gaze directly. But it is only the beginning. Be prepared for what lies ahead. She felt a shiver run down her spine, and the light in his eyes hinted at things she couldn't quite grasp. What do you mean? She pressed, searching for answers, the uncertainty churning right under her skin. Elias smiled, a knowing look that unnerved her. Every storm breaks that destruction births new beginnings. Trust in your community. The greatest strength lies in unity. Outside, the rain poured down ferociously as if the heavens themselves had declared war. A crackle of lightning illuminated their small haven, casting stark shadows across the walls. Maeve's heart raced, not just with fear but with the pulse of a community coming alive. Would they crumble or rise stronger together? Just as her thoughts wavered, a loud crash from outside cut through the air. The world dimmed for an instant, and Maeve gasped, her heart sinking. What had been unleashed upon them? In that moment, she understood, the storm was more than weather. It was a test, a life-altering moment that could redefine everything. As frigid winds blew through the cracks of their shelter, she could only wonder were they ready to face whatever was about to shatter their world. The crash echoed in Maeve's ears like a gunshot. She stepped back, her heart thudding wildly as she instinctively searched for Clara or Frank. The room was a swirl of anxious faces, each one mirroring her own dread. The flickering shadows shifted as the storm rattled their sanctuary, and her mind went blank. What was that? Someone murmured, the words barely rising over the relentless storm. Elias, ever calm, moved toward the window. It sounded like a tree or something heavy. We need to stay focused. The storm will challenge us. His voice held a steady cadence, grounding the chaos around them. Seeing him so composed made Maeve feel a flicker of determination. Elias is right. Maeve shouted, trying to rally the group. We can't let fear take hold. We need to assess, to help. She looked around, meeting the eyes of her new friends. They were each vulnerable yet strong, woven together in an unbreakable bond. Patrick steadied himself and shook his head, smiling despite the tumult. I'll check outside. We need to know what we're dealing with before we panic. No. Maeve yelled, panic rising in her throat. It's too dangerous out there. But Patrick was already moving, glancing back at Maeve with a look of defiance, as though he would not be swayed. As he slipped out into the storm, Maeve's heart raced. What if something had fallen? What if he got hurt? The uncertainty felt oppressive, a weight settling heavily in her chest. She clenched her jaw, unwilling to succumb to anxiety. Let me help. Clara jumped up, her tenacity shining brightly. I'll go with him. We need eyes on the situation. She bolted toward the door, giving Maeve a nod of encouragement. A tight knot of fear gripped Maeve from the inside, urging her to follow them. Stay with the group. Maeve called after them, hoping her voice could somehow reach them through the chaotic wind. A chaotic rustle erupted from the corner of the room. It was Frank. We should find something to barricade the doors. If the storm is as bad as it seems. His voice trailed off, but Maeve could see the concern etched in his face. Right. Maeve snapped back to the present, gathering herself. Let us work together. We can find furniture or anything strong, and then we can plan our next steps. As they quickly began to move tables and chairs away from the walls, Maeve felt empowerment rising alongside apprehension. They were a unit, acting as one. The sounds of rattling wind and pounding rain were no longer just a backdrop. They were the beating heart of a shared struggle. Elias moved among them, offering advice and support. Every now and then, he'd catch Maeve's eye, and she found solace in his calm presence. There was something profoundly grounding about him, something that whispered of resilience even in the face of chaos. Keep going. Someone shouted, a small chorus of encouragement blooming as the room began to feel safer, more fortified against the storm. It was a small victory, but it lit a spark in Maeve's chest. Then, from outside, a resounding crash made them all jump. The door rattled violently, and Maeve's eyes darted toward the source. A low growl of thunder followed, louder than before, as if the storm had taken notice of their defiance. Now what? Clara yelled as she re-entered, dread written across her features. It's worse than we thought. The roads are blocked. The group fell silent, adrenaline coursing through them with renewed vigor. They were trapped physically and mentally. But as Maeve looked at the faces around her, she couldn't help but feel that they were charged with determination. The storm might have locked them in, but it had also thrown them together. Together, they could reframe their fears into resolve. Just as Maeve grappled with newfound hope, a horrifying realization dawned on her: the storm outside was a signal of something darker lurking in the shadows. If nature could unleash such power, what if other forces were at play? She looked at Elias with wide eyes, wondering what he really knew about the storm and their community's fate. And then came the chilling thought: was this just the beginning of something much worse? Storm winds howled outside, their relentless fury echoing Maeve's growing sense of urgency. The room vibrated with chaos, but something stronger brewed beneath the surface, a fierce bond of unity. As the darkness enveloped their town, Maeve stood in the heart of it, feeling the heat of determination flare within her. "Listen up," she called, slicing through the fear that hung in the air. "We've put our trust in one another. We're all in this together. The storm may trap us physically, but it can't cage our spirit." Faces turned toward her, weary yet hopeful. She could see the strength stirring. Together, they could channel this wild energy into something powerful. "Let us reinforce the doors. Use whatever we can find," urged Patrick, returning breathless but unharmed. "Clara is right, we need a solid plan. Nature is fierce, but so are we." Hands worked quickly, grabbing furniture and forming barriers. Maeve's heart swelled as she watched old rivalries dissolve, forged anew in shared purpose. Laughter escaped in between breaths, fear slowly morphed into camaraderie, a transformation that was as heartwarming as the bread she baked. But in the corner of her eye, Maeve spotted Elias watching intently. "What's next?" she asked, nearly breathless but unwavering. "What do we do when the storm fronts with darkness?" "The true storm lies beyond the physical," Elias replied, his tone thoughtful. "You face not just nature's wrath, but the shadows within your community. The real test is uniting against mistrust and past grievances." It resonated with Maeve as she recalled every hateful glance thrown her way, and she drew in a breath. "We're stronger than our fears. Let us remind everyone why we came together," she said, stepping closer to the fabric of their reluctant community. "Let us share our stories. Let us share our hopes." Eager nods rippled through the crowd. They gathered closely, feeling warmth blanket the tension. Clara turned and smiled, a flicker of trust igniting in her eyes. "I'll go first," she spoke, her voice steady. "I was scared when Maeve first opened her bakery, afraid of losing what made our town ours. But I've tasted her bread. It's not just food, it's love. It brings us together." Her words took root, and one by one, they began sharing the struggles that connected them. Hope and understanding washed through the room like the gentle rain that had turned into a torrential downpour outside. Stories of loss transformed into tales of resilience. Maeve felt the chains of division breaking with every voice that joined in. Then, amidst the stories, something shifted. A realization bloomed: their identities as individuals could thrive without losing their roots. As they unraveled their deep fears and dreams woven into their histories, the air brimming with connection felt palpable. The storm continued to roar outside, but inside, hope glistened with a newfound light. "Together, we are our own shelter," Maeve declared with growing confidence. "If we unite, no storm can drown us." Suddenly, cracks of thunder intertwined with passionate applause, cheers igniting around her. A fierce joy ignited in Maeve's heart. She could see her home, the bakery, flourishing not just as a business, but as a foundation for community triumphing over adversity. Then Elias stepped forward, more serious than before. "This is an important step, but it is only the beginning. The storm will push you to confront what lurks below. Stay vigilant." The crowd listened, breaths held as his foreboding sentiment lingered in their hearts. Maeve nodded, willing to acknowledge that the road ahead might still be treacherous. But now, they had something greater, the seeds of trust entwined among them, grown under extreme pressure. With a heavy clang, the door shuddered violently again. The wind howled, yet Maeve felt the walls of camaraderie holding steady. She turned toward her friends, realizing that in embracing their memories, fears, and hopes, they were armed for anything this tempest threw at them. With the last flickers of sunlight trying to break through the storm clouds, Maeve lifted her chin with renewed conviction. Together, we build a brighter future. Let us take the risks needed to pave a new way. As the group erupted into loud cheers, Maeve couldn't help but feel like they were all reborn as warriors against both nature and man. A defeated Frank stood among them now, his facade crumbling as he realized he could no longer dictate their fate. They turned toward him with courage glowing brightly in their smile, pushing towards new possibilities as they embraced the unknown. Moments stretched and spun into one another as a sense of purpose thrummed through them. They each knew the journey forward would be filled with challenges, but with trust in their hearts, they could weather any storm together. They would emerge, unbroken and uplifted, forged anew by the fate that had once felt so frightening. That night, together, as the storm raged, they would light the path to a better tomorrow, one built on love, acceptance, and unity. Maeve smiled radiantly, her bakery now a bastion of hope. This was their moment. And she knew, without a doubt, they would rise, now more than ever. If you felt inspired by Maeve's journey, you need to subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread the hope. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending, we want to hear your voice. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Together, let us keep this light shining.